everyone. Welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, independent financial advisor and owner of Elevation Financial. Thanks for joining me today. So I got a new setup here. If you're on audio, this won't mean anything to you. If you're on video, I've got a new monitor. So I've got my camera here. I'm doing face on instead of at an angle. So the lighting's a little bit weird. So I'm going to work on it, but that's kind of why it looks a little bit different here. So let's get started with today's episode. So today we're going to talk about EINs. What is an EIN? Do you need one? What's the big deal? What's it stand for? What's the advantages? What is it? So this is mainly for my business owners or people who are thinking of starting a business. Maybe you're starting a business now, or you've owned one for a while, or you're thinking of launching a business someday. This will apply to you. So what is an EIN? An EIN stands for Employer Identification Number. You also sometimes see it as FEIN, which is Federal Employer Identification Number. It can also be called an employer, like a business tax ID, goes by different names, but technically it stands for Employer Identification Number, or EIN for short. And this is something that applies to businesses. So what factors determine if you need an EIN? Or what factors determine if you might want to get one anyway? Even if you don't necessarily technically are required to have one, you still might want one. And we're going to go through those things. So again, I've heard this question come up a lot of times when people are starting a business, especially, or in the early stages, kind of thinking through all the stuff they need. And I do have a previous episode on LLCs that also includes kind of a bit about EINs in that general walkthrough. So if you're looking for just kind of a general one-stop walkthrough of starting a business with all the logistics, go find that episode. I forget the number, but it's called How to Start an LLC, I believe. But specifically today, we're going to dig into the EIN. So what is an EIN? An EIN, again, an employer identification number. It's a tax ID for your business. And who needs one? Who is required to have an EIN? Let's start with that. You are required to have an EIN if you have employees. If you're any business at all with employees, this includes sole proprietorships. Even if you're a sole proprietorship, you still need an EIN if you have employees. That is required. Any corporation or entity taxed as a corporation. So if you're an S Corp, for example, or a C Corp, or you're taxed as an S Corp, maybe you're an LLC and you grew to the point where it makes more sense to be taxed as an S Corp, you have to have an EIN. Also, multi-member LLC. So if you're an LLC with more than one member, more than one owner, you are required to have an EIN. If you buy a business or inherit a business, you have to have an EIN for that. If you have a retirement plan attached to your business, such as a KEO plan, or more commonly a solo 401k plan. I do a lot of solo 401ks. I have one myself. They're really popular with solo business owners. And if you want to have a retirement plan like a solo 401k, you have to have an EIN for that. Also, more of a negative one, but if you file for bankruptcy, you've got to have one of those. So obviously we don't want that to happen, but an EIN is required for that. So there are some instances where your business is required to have an EIN. So you just kind of have to have one. But there's a lot of cases where you don't necessarily have to have one. A lot of times, your average, very simple single member LLC isn't really required to have one, but it's still a good idea. It's still worth considering, and it might have some benefits. So let's talk about the benefits. So again, going back to what it is, an EIN is your tax ID for your business. Your social security number is your tax ID for yourself as a person. An EIN can be thought of as the business equivalent. It is a tax ID for your business. So why is it an advantage? Why would you want one? So for one thing, it helps prevent identity theft. So if you don't have an EIN and you're running a business, you'll be using your social security number as your tax ID, and you'll have to give it out for various things. If you're doing banking or other things, you might have to give that out. If you have an EIN, you would give out your EIN instead of your social security number, which keeps your social security number more hidden, less accessible. You're giving it out fewer places. So it's a good idea to have an EIN simply to prevent identity theft and protect your social security number. Also, an EIN gives you credibility and professionalism. So if you're interfacing with vendors or clients or partners that maybe want your EIN for tax purposes, giving your EIN signals that you have some level of professionalism and credibility. It's going to be kind of a marker of trust that signifies that you're taking your business seriously and you have a tax ID for the business. Also, it helps you separate your personal and business finances, both logistically and philosophically as well. So Logistically, it has that separation of having a tax ID for your business. But philosophically, I like this advantage as well because it helps you truly think of your business as a separate entity. I see all sorts of cases where a business owner will have their whole identity and their whole brand wrapped up in their business, and they'll think of it as kind of the same. They even say things like, "Hey, it's the same money, right? It's just me. I'm a solo business. The money that comes in is my money. It's the same thing, right?" So by having a separate EIN, it helps you have one more kind of marker or signal that your business really is truly a separate entity. And I always encourage business owners to think of your business as truly a separate entity. It's not your whole identity. It's not, your whole personality and individual, humanness as a person. It's not you necessarily. It's part of you, and it's an asset you own and manage, much like your home. But we don't want to think of it as so tightly wrapped up into your identity. That's unhealthy mentally, in my opinion, and also can lead to problems later on, which I've talked about other places. So it's really a good idea to make sure that you're thinking of your business as a separate asset, a separate entity, and have some separation outside of yourself. Also, for the most part, you will need an EIN to open a business bank account. Some banks will let you open a bank account with just your social security number, but more often I've found banks will require an EIN to open a business account. And going back to separating your business and personal finances, you really want to have a separate business account for your business. I know some business owners that are really casual and they operate everything out of their business or their personal account, and they just kind of run all their stuff through personal. That gets really messy. So you really want to have a separate business account, and an EIN is typically going to help you get that. Also, if your business requires licenses, either state or local licenses or federal licenses, these typically require an EIN. So people that work in healthcare or wellness, people that work in the financial industry like mine, require licenses, and those licenses will require you to have an EIN for your business. Having an EIN helps you hire employees. As we talked about at the beginning, an EIN is required if you have employees. So you may as well go ahead and get one and start using it, because who knows if you're going to hire employees later. When you hire that first employee, you want to be able to hit the ground running and make sure that you have everything in place, and having an EIN will facilitate that. Also, I don't really like this one as much, but it is an advantage for some. An EIN helps you build credit and get loans for your business. I'm pretty anti-debt, as you probably know if you've listened to me for more than 5 minutes. I hate debt. I know it's necessary in some cases, so I'm not saying it's totally wrong for everybody. But whenever possible, I try to avoid debt. I don't even use a credit card. I avoid business and personal debt altogether. So I don't like necessarily emphasizing that an EIN helps you build credit and get business loans, but it does. It's just a factor. It's just a fact of life. So if you are in a position where you need to get loan and build credit for your business, then an EIN will help you do that. Also, planning for retirement. As we mentioned early on here in this discussion, if you want to set up a solo 401k plan for your business, you will have to have an EIN for that. And a lot of business owners really take advantage of this, because the solo 401k plan is really nice in that if you kind of max out your IRA or Roth IRA, what do you do next? If you want a tax advantage retirement account, one of your best options is a solo 401k plan. And so having an EIN allows you to set that up for your business and save a lot more into Roth accounts, for example, or pre-tax accounts, and take advantage of that. So an EIN facilitates your ability to set up a retirement plan for your business, even if you're a solo business owner. And then finally, it protects your assets from business liability and losses. So much like an LLC or an S Corp will give you some liability protection, shielding your personal assets, an EIN emphasizes that as well. So along with the LLC or the S Corp entity, the EIN really kind of solidifies that you're a separate entity from a tax standpoint, and can create a layer of protection between your business and your personal assets. So we want that as well. So those are some reasons why it makes a lot of sense to get an EIN. There are very few cases where I can't remember the last time I recommended someone not get an EIN. It seems to only have upsides, and I can't think of any downsides really. I've never come across a downside when working with a business owner. So if you are running a business of any kind, generally, again, I say generally because there's always exceptions somewhere, but generally it likely makes sense to go ahead and set the EIN up. Now, how do you get one? What do you do if you don't have one? Let's say you're starting a business and you want to set your EIN up from the start, how do you get one? So first of all, don't pay for it. It is free. EINs are free. Do not pay anyone to do it for you. There are services that I shouldn't say don't pay anyone. I mean, there are cases where you should pay your attorney to do a bunch of stuff and they'll just do the EIN as part of that and you're paying them, and that's fine. But if you encounter a service that says, hey, give us $50 and we'll register your EIN for you, all they're doing is going to the IRS website and they're spending 10 minutes online setting it up, and it's free and instant. So it's very easy. Once you have your LLC entity or whatever entity is going to be, once that's set up, all you have to do is go to the IRS website. Just Google, create EIN IRS or something, and you'll find that it's an irs.gov address. And you do it online. You just fill out some basic information about your company or your business. And at the end, you get an instant EIN. You can download the packet that contains it, and you're officially up and running with an EIN. So that's all you have to do. It's free. I don't advise you paying for it. There's no reason to pay for it unless there's special circumstances where complexity really dictates that you should be working with an attorney or something. But in general, it's free, really easy, really free, really fast. So that's how you get one. So that is the kind of unboxing what an EIN is, who needs it, who may not need it, but still could take advantage of it, and how you get one. So if you are starting a business and you're looking at the EIN, this is the process. If you already run a business and maybe you're a sole proprietorship and you don't have one yet, it might be worth looking into. As always, talk to your accountant or financial advisor or attorney, whoever helps you with business stuff, and ask them for more specific advice, because this is not specific advice. This is general education. So if you have any questions at all, talk to your professional about if an EIN makes sense for you. So as always, I certainly hope that's helpful, and I would love to hear from you if you have any questions. So feel free to give me a shout. You know where to find me. My website is elevationfinancial.com. If you are a client, obviously just reach out and give me a shout and we'll chat. If you're not a client and you'd like to just ask some simple questions, go to elevationfinancial.com, click on that button on the homepage that says book a complimentary money session, and I will be happy to answer any questions you might have. No charge, and whatever I can do to help, we'll do it. So with that, thanks as always for joining me today. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.